Welcome back to the Screen Team right here on KWOC. Glad you could stick around for this second half hour of the show. And I've got a brand new guest, somebody brand new to the Screen Team. We've got Miss Sue Sostak. Sue, good to see you. How are you?
I'm glad to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you on board. For those who don't know, Sue, you are the director of the Poplar Bluff Public Library. Is that right?
I am, and I'm glad to be there, and I think I'm one of the most fortunate people in the world to be there.
We're glad to have you there. One quick thing that I think people need to know about the library. It's a great place to obviously get books and reading materials and educational items and stuff like that. But what people don't know is you can get movies there too.
Oh, we have a huge collection of videos, the DVD, and we've all started adding our Blu-ray collection as well. And we have the collection for the children downstairs, and the children love it, and they'll be able to come in. Not only do they check them out, but they use them in the library as well. And then upstairs we have things for the adults, as well as they're not just the sort of fun things or the feature films, but we also have the documentaries, the things that people sometimes say, oh, I don't want to be taught, but boy, they're wonderful things to be taught. And in fact, one of the films I'm going to talk about today is a documentary.
Yeah, we're doing our show that you and I are doing is kind of a Olympic theme show. Have you watched any of the Olympics so far?
Oh my gosh, yes I have. And I didn't get to see the men's rowing, but I did get to see the women's 8-man scull rowing, which is, of course, one of the films we're going to talk about is the rowing team. And they made mention of the Boys of 36 in that particular event, as well as the book, The Boys in the Boat. So that's one part of what we're going to talk about today. But also, I've had a wonderful time watching, Simone Biles,
She's great.
And yeah, she is, and she's such a cutie too. I've enjoyed watching the swimming, and and of course Michael Phelps everybody talks about, but Lookie, I've really enjoyed watching her too, and she's just
smoking.
Tremendous.
She's smoking the competition.
Yes, she is.
She's
and
great.
Then she's 18 years old. Can you imagine?
No, I can't even do like a half a lap.
I know.
Let's talk about your first film we're doing today. It's The Boys of 36. It's a documentary that I believe was put on by PBS. Is that correct?
That is correct. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about The Boys of 36 is the library is moving forward to what we call One Community, One Read. And The Boys of 36 is the documentary about the book, The Boys in the Boat. The wonderful aspect of this particular documentary, think about it, folks, 1936, and you ought to see the film footage that's in there. And in fact, there's one cut in one place in there where they're showing the NBC film crew in the background taking pictures, so you know how this film, and they were not taking 16 millimeter. They were not, if you don't even know what 16 millimeter is, it wasn't video. It was probably 60-something millimeter. I can't remember the millimeter that was used at that time. So it's just exciting to have seen it. And they show these people watching these sculls, and that's what they call the rowing boats, that go through and as they win. And the Boys of 36, the tremendous aspect of those young men, there were 9 of them. 8 of them are actually rowers, and there's one guy that says, stroke, stroke. And he's got this little megaphone on his mouth, as in it's a little device, as he tells these guys. These young men were from the state of Washington. They were all working class. Some of them were working class from the time they were 10 years old. One of the young men, Joe Rance, and his daughter is going to be speaking in Poplar Bluff in October. And he was actually abandoned as a child at 10 years of age because his stepmother decided she didn't want him in the family anymore, and so they just left him. And I'm not going to give away more than that because the Boys of 36 talks about that. But those of you listening, imagine a 10-year-old left to fend for himself.
Yeah.
How did he make his living? He was allowed to chop wood so that he could stay at the schoolhouse. 10 years old. I can't imagine doing that when I was 10 years old, and it's just incredible to think. But every one of these young men who were on the Washington rowing team had to make their own way. They worked in sawmills. They were lumberjacks. They worked in very dangerous jobs as very young people. How did these young men, but they thought education was important enough. They got their high school degrees, and they went on to the University of Washington. Education was the way out of that poverty. So they went to the University of Washington. Why did they get on the rowing team? Because the sports teams were fed. Think about it. They did it because
Oh,
they needed
wow.
food. And they wanted to be able to eat. So they not only did that, but guess what? As a result of this hard labor these young men did, guess what kind of physiques they had? Guess how strong they were? And so that made them ideal because they were strong through their shoulders, and their legs, and that's what rowers need. And the other part I want to tell you about rowing, we usually think of the rowing teams as the elite sports. Usually those are the people who go to school at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and in England it's at Cambridge, it's at Oxford. But in the United States in 1936, it was a team from the University of Washington. And they amazed and surprised everyone. And yes, I'm going to tell you the end of the story. It's not like any other film. The end of the story is those guys triumphed in 1936. And guess what team they beat in 1936? Because if you don't know, the Olympics were in Berlin. Who was in Berlin in 1936? That's when the Nazi regime was starting to gear up. And the team they beat at the finals was the German rowing team.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it's a Cinderella story, but it's not just a Cinderella story. It's a triumph over adversity. Not only did they beat Hitler, but they beat their circumstances. And that's what I think is so emotional and what really tugs at your heart when you watch The Boys of 36 and read the book, The Boys in the Boat. And I want to encourage people in the community to read Boys in the Boat. We're doing a one community, one read, and it's geared around the Boys in the Boat and the Boys of 36. But here we are, and we're in the Olympic season, and we can look at other films as well that show about triumph and ability to move on. One of the more famous stories that comes out of 1936 is the Jesse Owens story.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Sue.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Okay.
We're gonna have to go to commercial break here in just a second. So we'll get into some of your other movies. We'll be doing Race. We'll also be doing Cool Runnings. But a couple more quick notes here on The Boys of 36. I'm curious. Was there a narration to the film, or was it just kind of something with just pictures and words and stuff like that? Was someone explaining what was going on?
Well, there was narration, and there was also interviews with some of the children of the rowers. One is Judy Rance Willman, Joe Rance's daughter, as well as Mock's daughter as well. And then there were some interviews with people who understood and knew about the skulls and how they were made. Daniel James Brown, who is the author of the book, The Boys in the Boat, was also interviewed. So you had a combination of things going throughout to capture interest in the documentary. It was an hour long, and I felt like it went way too fast.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more.
Is this something that's going to be available at the library in the future?
Yes, it's available in the library, and not only that, on September 9th, it's going to be our Sunday matinee at the library. It's going to be showing at 2 o'clock on what we call the ginormous screen down in the library theater. And it is a ginormous screen. It's a 30-foot screen.
And really quickly, remind us, when is the family member of the team coming in? Sometime in October, right?
Yes, she's coming October the 15th. And as a part of what's going on with the Boys in the Boat is we're sponsoring essay and art contests for the children in the schools. And you can find out more about that on the library's website, www.popperbluff.org, as well as you can find out other things about what the activities are going on, because the winners and the children who participate in the art and essay contest are going to be treated with a pizza party at the library at 12 noon on October the 15th.
Great. The documentary is called The Boys of 36, and if you want more information on it, just stop on by the Poplar Bluff Public Library. We'll be right back with a review of the movie Race. It's coming your way next on KWOC.